In a small village tucked away between rolling hills, there was a modest little house that stood at the edge of the village. It wasn't grand, but it was full of love. This was the home of Clara and Julia, two sisters who lived with their parents. Their house was simple, with a small garden out back where their mother grew flowers and vegetables. Despite having little money, they were content with what they had, and the family was very close. Clara, the younger of the two sisters, was known throughout the village for her kindness and hard-working nature. She woke up every morning with the sunrise, ready to help her mother with chores around the house. She liked the smell of fresh bread in the morning and the sound of the birds singing outside. Clara always had a bright smile on her face and an eagerness to help. She worked in the garden, sweeping the floor, or helping with the dishes without being asked. Her family appreciated her efforts, and they knew they could count on her. Julia, on the other hand, was a few years older and not as eager to work. While Clara loved being active, Julia often preferred to take long walks or relax by the fire. She didn't mind being outside, but she wasn't interested in the hard work that went into making the house run smoothly. Why waste time working when you can enjoy life? Julia would say. She was known for her beauty, and sometimes she spent more time admiring herself than actually helping with the household chores. Clara often thought that Julia took everything for granted, while she herself worked hard without complaint. Their parents were loving, but tired from working all day in the fields. They both knew how important it was to have a clean house, a garden full of vegetables, and a warm home for the winter. But they also knew that their daughters had different ways of approaching the work. One morning, as the sun started to peek through the trees, their father called Clara and Julia into the yard. "The cold months are coming, and we need to prepare," he said. "Clara, I want you to take care of the garden today. We need vegetables for the winter, and I trust you to do a good job. Julia, you will help your mother clean the house and prepare for the colder weather." Clara's face lit up. "Yes, Father, I'll take care of the garden," she said excitedly, eager to do something productive. She loved gardening and had a special way of making everything grow strong and healthy. She quickly grabbed her tools and ran outside to start working. Julia, who had been sitting by the window, didn't look up right away. "Okay," she said, though she didn't feel as enthusiastic. She preferred to relax, not scrub the floors or wash dishes. But their mother had already begun gathering cleaning supplies, so Julia reluctantly got up to help. Clara was in the garden, her hands in the dirt as she carefully planted seeds and watered the soil. She enjoyed the feeling of the earth beneath her fingers. It felt satisfying to know that every little action she took was was helping the plants grow. The warm sunlight made her feel happy and energized, and she worked diligently, making sure each plant had enough space and care. Meanwhile, Julia was inside the house. She began washing the dishes, but she didn't dry them properly. She swept the floor, but there were spots she missed. She didn't care much for making things perfect, and often found herself drifting off in thought, thinking about what she would do later. "I'll get to it," she kept saying. But the house was still far from clean. Their parents noticed the difference. Clara's garden was looking wonderful, with healthy plants growing tall. But inside the house, things were not as tidy as they should have been. Dust gathered on the windowsills, and the kitchen was cluttered. Days passed, and Clara continued to work hard in the garden, while Julia spent more time sitting and daydreaming. Clara's vegetables began to grow, and the garden flourished. There were tomatoes, beans, carrots, and even pumpkins starting to form. Clara made sure to water the plants every morning and check for weeds, and every evening she would admire the progress of her work. Inside, the house was getting messier. Julia still hadn't done much to help. Her mother asked her to clean the kitchen again, but Julia only half-heartedly wiped down the counters and left the floors unwashed. "It's fine," Julia would say. "I'll do it later." As the days turned into weeks, Clara's vegetables began to take shape, and their family's garden looked healthy and full of life. Clara spent more and more time in the garden, nurturing the plants, making sure they grew strong and tall. Meanwhile, Julia was still letting the housework pile up. She would occasionally wash the dishes, but never dry them completely. The floors weren't swept thoroughly, and the house remained messy. Their parents began to notice the difference. Clara was always busy, but the house was getting dirtier and dirtier. One evening, after a long day of work, their father looked around the house and said, "Clara, your garden looks amazing. You've done a great job. I'm proud of you." Julia, sitting in a corner with her arms crossed, muttered, "But I helped too." Her father gave her a soft but serious look. "You've helped, yes, but your work isn't enough. The house needs to be cared for as well. It's important that we keep it clean, especially with the winter coming." Julia didn't say anything more, but inside, she felt the sting of her father's words. She couldn't deny that the house wasn't in great shape, and her laziness was partly to blame. The time had come for the harvest. Clara's vegetables were ripe and ready to be picked. She had worked so hard, and now her efforts were paying off. She spent the entire day in the garden, picking the ripe tomatoes, carrots, and beans. She carefully placed them into baskets and prepared them to be taken to the village market. When their father saw how much Clara had harvested, he smiled with pride. "Look at this. We have enough vegetables to last through the winter and more to sell at the market. Great job, Clara." Clara felt a deep sense of pride in her work. She had helped her family, and her hard work had paid off. She was happy to know that the vegetables would keep her family fed during the cold months ahead. Meanwhile, Julia was still putting off her chores. The house was cold and unprepared for the winter. Their father asked Julia to help with the house, but she simply shrugged and said, "I'll do it later." Her mother asked her to clean the chimney, but Julia didn't do it properly. The house wasn't ready for the harsh winter that was coming, and Julia didn't seem to care. When it came time to sell the vegetables at the market, Clara worked hard to pack and sell everything. The villagers admired her hard work and bought plenty of the fresh vegetables. The money they earned would help the family buy what they needed for the colder months. Their father, seeing how hard Clara had worked, was proud of her. "Clara, you've done such an excellent job. You've worked so hard for our family. You deserve something special." With a big smile, Clara's father handed her a beautiful new coat. "This will keep you warm during the winter," he said. Clara felt a rush of joy. "Thank you, Father," she said, her eyes sparkling with happiness. The coat was a symbol of all her hard work and dedication, and Clara felt deeply grateful. Winter arrived, and while Clara's hard work had provided her family with everything they needed, Julia faced the consequences of her laziness. The house was cold because the chimney had not been cleaned. The roof leaked, and the walls were not prepared for the winter chill. The extra money from the sale of the vegetables helped to fix some of the problems. But it was clear that Julia's neglect had caused more trouble than it was worth. Julia felt guilty, but she didn't understand why everything had gone wrong. Why should Clara get all the praise? I worked hard too, Julia thought. But deep down, she knew she had not done enough. Their parents spoke to her kindly. "Julia, you need to take responsibility for your actions. If you want to be treated with respect, you need to do your part. We all have to work together." Julia finally realized that her laziness had hurt her family, and she made a promise to herself to work harder in the future. As the winter months passed, Julia began to feel the weight of her laziness. The cold winds outside seemed to remind her of the work she had neglected, and every time she walked past the areas of the house that needed fixing, she couldn't help but feel guilty. The leaks in the roof caused the family to spend extra money, and the chimney, which she had been asked to clean, was still clogged. Clara, on the other hand, had spent her days continuing to help with the household chores. The warmth of the house was thanks to her hard work in both the garden and the house. She did not complain, and when the firewood needed stacking, Clara was the one to get it done. Every morning, Clara would wake up early and make sure the house was warm before her parents awoke. Her work kept everything running smoothly, and her parents often praised her for her hard work. One evening, after a long day of work, Julia sat by the fire. She felt both sad and frustrated. Why can't I be more like Clara? She thought to herself. She works so hard, and everyone praises her, but I feel like I'm not enough. I should have helped more. Clara noticed the change in Julia's mood and sat next to her by the fire. She gently placed a hand on her sister's shoulder. It's okay, Julia. I know you didn't mean for things to get out of hand. The important thing is that you realize what happened. We can all learn from our mistakes. Julia looked at her sister, feeling a mixture of guilt and admiration. I know I should have worked harder, Julia said quietly. I just didn't understand that neglecting the house would cause so many problems. Clara smiled softly. It's never too late to start. We can work together to fix things. I'm here to help you. That night, Julia made a decision. She would not let her laziness control her anymore. From then on, she would try harder, not just for herself, but for the sake of the family. Clara's kindness had opened her eyes, and she realized how much work it took to keep the family home running smoothly. The next morning, Julia woke up early, before Clara had even finished her chores. She knew she had a lot of catching up to do. Julia started by fixing the roof, patching up the leaks that had caused the family trouble during the cold nights. She worked hard, paying attention to every detail. She used the tools her father had left by the door and got to work, taking each step carefully. It was hard, tiring work, but Julia didn't mind. As she worked on the roof, Clara came out to the yard and saw her sister busy at work. You're up early, Clara said with a smile. Julia paused for a moment, wiping sweat from her forehead. I have a lot to do, she said. I want to make things right. I know I've been lazy, and I want to change that. Clara smiled warmly. I'm proud of you, Julia. You're doing great. Julia looked at her sister and felt a new sense of determination. She wasn't going to waste any more time. She could see now that the path to earning respect was through hard work and dedication, just like Clara had shown her. She took a deep breath and continued her work, feeling a sense of purpose that had been missing before. That afternoon, Julia also helped with the garden. She spent hours weeding the garden and preparing it for the coming spring. Clara joined her, and together they worked side by side, planting new seeds for the next season. The garden, which had once been Clara's responsibility alone, now felt like a shared task. The two sisters talked and laughed as they worked. their bond growing stronger. As the days turned into weeks, Julia and Clara continued to work together. Julia's attitude changed completely, and her efforts were no longer half-hearted. She began to clean the house properly, sweep the floors, and tidy up every corner. The house, once messy and cold, was now warm and inviting. There was no more neglect. Julia took pride in her work and didn't mind spending long hours making sure everything was in order. The sisters' relationship also improved. They spent more time together, helping each other with tasks, and their conversations became more meaningful. Clara was patient with Julia, and Julia began to appreciate the work that Clara had done all along. They no longer argued about the chores, and there was no longer a sense of competition between them. Instead, there was a sense of teamwork. One evening, as the two sisters worked in the garden, their father came outside to see how they were doing. He saw how hard they both were working and smiled proudly. "You two are doing an excellent job," he said. "I'm so happy to see you working together. The house is much warmer now, and the garden is looking great. I couldn't be prouder of you both." Julia looked at Clara and smiled. "Thank you for being patient with me, Clara," she said. "I didn't understand before, but now I see how important it is to work hard for our family. I'm glad we're doing this together." Clara smiled back, her eyes shining with warmth. "I'm proud of you, Julia. You've come so far. We're a team now." As time passed, the family grew closer. Clara and Julia's relationship, once strained, had transformed into a strong bond of love and respect. Julia's hard work had earned her the trust and admiration of her parents. They no longer worried about the house being messy or the garden being neglected. Both daughters had proven that they could be relied upon, and the family's home was a much happier place. The winter passed without much trouble. The family had enough food to last through the season, and the house remained warm and well maintained. Clara's vegetables had helped them get through the cold months, and Julia's efforts had kept the house in order. They worked together to make sure everything was ready for spring, from planting new seeds to cleaning the house and preparing for the warmer weather. One evening, as they sat around the fire, their father turned to them both. "I'm proud of both of you," he said. "You've worked hard, and you've learned some important lessons. It's not just about doing the work. It's about working together as a family. That's what makes us strong." Their mother nodded in agreement. "You've both grown so much. You've learned the value of hard work and the importance of helping each other." Clara and Julia smiled at each other, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for their family. They knew that their bond was stronger than ever, and that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they could face them together the lessons they had learned would stay with them for the rest of their lives. With the arrival of spring, the family was ready for a new chapter. Clara and Julia continued to work together, side by side. Their bond had never been stronger, and the house was always full of love, laughter, and hard work. They both knew that life would always have challenges, but they had learned how to face them together. The garden once again began to flourish, and this time, Clara and Julia worked side by side to ensure its success. The family had grown stronger, not just because of the hard work, but because of the love and respect they had for each other. As they stood together, watching the garden bloom once again, Clara and Julia knew that no matter what happened, they would always be there for each other, working together to build a better future for their family.